All right, everybody, we are live now. I am learning to be on this technology. I apologize to everybody. We are here this evening, and we are I'm going to jump right into this. Welcome to RaineySpeak. Every week I've been teaching from my book, which I wrote some time ago. And then other weeks I've been having discussions. Last week I had all of the guys on, and this week I am blessed to have all of the women on. So we're going to have a powerful time. I am, what I have through my studies and times, what I've discovered, if you look at different religions, they look different on the surface. But the more you study, the closer they get until you realize everybody is saying the same thing, just in a different way. And so we are going to just sort of like move through where I'm going to have each one of you share about 3 minutes on how you got from where you started. I started Roman Catholic, and through my experiences, I ended up studying Edgar Cayce. And from Edgar Cayce, I went into metaphysics. So it was a journey for me to get to where I am now, and also being initiated as a Tigray priest in the Akan system. So I'm going to start with, who did I ask to start?
Me.
There you go. Reverend Outlaw.
Yes, sir.
From Northeast Imani Temple. I first met this sister at Imani Temple on Capitol Hill. And I looked up and saw really a Black woman priest in the Catholic Church. Now, you know, that's a journey right there.
Yes, it is.
So, welcome, and it's on you.
Thank you, Bishop. Good to see you. Good to see all the sisters. I started also in the Roman Catholic Church, Holy Redeemer on New Jersey Avenue. Yeah, Lord. My mom was Roman Catholic. My dad, Baptist. And you have your highs and lows and all of that. I kind of got put out by, they didn't put me out. I kind of was taken aback by the Roman Catholic Church when I got pregnant out of wedlock. And it was a thing where you shouldn't be so brazen as to walk up in church with your belly out and you not married. And I said, well, what? So I used to sneak into the church when nobody was there, I had to be there. But my journey took me to Imani Temple. My ministry is Northeast Imani Fellowship, which is out of my home. But I was ordained 20 years ago, Lord have mercy. Imani Temple under Archbishop G. Augustus Stallings. And it scared the mess out of me because I had to think about that. And I said, whoa, wait, we're an alternative Catholic church. Oh my God, I'm gonna be a priest. Oh my God. and all that. And I said, no, not doing it, nuh-uh. And there's a book entitled God's Yes is Louder Than My No. I don't even know if it's still in publication. That book helped me a whole lot to get through. And my journey was, the story of Samuel. I was in the house, I can't get into all that, but I was in the house and I heard my name called 3 times. And I said, oh my goodness. And I sat down and I said, yes, Lord. And that was that for me. That was yeah. So, and here I am.
Yes, and I remember that journey because I was over at Imani when it started.
Oh, yes, you were. That's right. Oh my God, I was petrified.
I said that the Roman Catholic Church maybe was spinning on its head.
Yeah.
Because not only did Archbishop openly leave the Roman Catholic Church, he had the nerve to ordain women in the African American Catholic Church, and I was like. I said with him, I said, you do know what you're doing, right?
I think
that was a journey.
I'm the
And
seventh female in the group. So yeah,
yes,
I said it, all things in divine order. All things in divine order. Let's stop
absolutely.
fighting.
Who are we going to next?
I think it is I.
Okay, I.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm Reverend Akusama McCrae, pastor of Unity Fellowship Church in Washington. My journey is not unlike anyone else. I started as a Methodist. My parents divorced. My father became Baptist. He not only left my mother, but he left my mother's religion. And I was in church from infancy to 18 years. And then when I finally got big enough or grown enough to leave, I moved at the age of 18 and started to live my life. And it had nothing to do with going to church. I mean, I had a good time. So I got all of that out. And then I met a group of Rastafarians, and we used to be together all the time, the Jamaicans, and we would listen to each other, read the scripture, and break it down every day. Every day, that was my church.
Mm-hmm.
And then a good friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, over 30 years, said, "I'm going to rein you in, right? I'm pulling you in," and introduced me to Bishop Cheeks, who I sat under for a number of years to become a deacon. I only went there to sing in the choir and usher. I had nothing. I didn't want to do anything else. I was pretty clear about that. But I don't know if I'm Samuel, but somebody called my name. Someone called my name. And so I spent 2 years training to be a deacon, 2 years as a minister, and then ordained as a reverend. And I think what I learned the most is where when I went to Howard University, I got to look at the Bible differently. I got to open it and see it differently. I did that, and God just kept calling me. And my sister introduced me to Bishop, introduced me to Sweet Honey and the Rock. I went to the workshop, auditioned to be in the workshop, passed the audition, and that was my new church. Sweet Honey and the Rock was actually my sanctuary because they're very positive women, and they taught me how to sing a cappella. So that was my church for a while. And back and forth, Inner Light. I don't know where I'd be if I were not under the wings of Bishop Cheeks when in my younger years. You know, I'm 70 now, so I've gone through it. I've truly gone through it. But I think what I learned was success is where prepared meets opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I got myself ready to become a pastor. I, got rid of some people, places, and things, and opened my church in 2002, and have been studying and learning a lot about myself and a lot about the people I serve. And I just feel blessed. I
remember when you first came to church, she said, "I'm just going to sing."
That's it.
I was like, yeah, I'm just going to sing. I just want to be in the choir. I just want to sing. I kept saying, yeah, right. Get in class. Because I could see the anointing on her life. And singing is truly one of her gifts that blesses everyone. But I am so glad for your yes.
Yes, I am too. It took me a minute, but yeah, so I pastored my church for 19 years this May, so God has been good.
Oh, Lord, 19 years.
19 years.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yes, God is good. So
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Happy to be here.
Well, Ia, unmute yourself.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Baba. My name is Rebecca, daughter of Oshun. And I started my journey as a 6-year-old on a Pentecostal bench where I had an experience with spirit. I spoke in tongues at the benediction, and I felt a quickening of my body, and I didn't understand any of it. And I never told anyone until I became an adult. But that was funny because my life has been at the benediction is when I arise. So at endings is where I began.
Uh-huh.
So I started as a Pentecostal child, and I was the daughter of a Pentecostal minister, female. And then I had my own conversion experience at 13, became a Christian missionary. I too was kicked out of the church at 18. I had worn a bathing suit, and I wasn't supposed to wear this bathing suit. And I had drowned in a pool, and they had found me, and I wanted to stand up and testify about it. And the pastor didn't like that. And there were other matters. But bottom line is, after I was kicked out of the church, I was welcomed into the bosom of God. And once I had these other experiences, I was searching, looking at Buddhism, getting ready to get my kahunza, going and chanting and things like that. And then there was a period of unemployment, and I went to the river, and I would sit there day in and day out and day in and day out. And then someone invited me to a Yoruba ceremony, and I was smitten again in spirit at the first time I went there. And so many years later, of course, I met my godfather when I was in my 20s. And many years later, he initiated me into the priesthood. And here I stand today, called to do what I came here to do, which is to assist folk with various matters that relate to emotional pain. So that's how I got here.
Uh-huh. Yes. You know what? I love it because every one of you come up, I'm looking at a bunch of rebels. Just going in, turning churches over and stuff. I get you a bunch of rebels. Just don't know how to act. Put a bunch of women together. Look what you do. Just
well, Christ started over the church at 12 years old. So, I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Nana Malaya, this is another sister, beautiful singer, actress, and artist. And I can't remember if I met you first as an artist or as a priest. I think I probably saw you as a priest.
And I don't remember. We've known each other so long.
Yeah, yes, it goes a while.
Together. You're one of those folks. When did you meet Rainey? I don't know. How, where? I don't remember. So, but it might have been through almost doing an Abbott as children. You know, that could have been part of it as well. But well, the short story for me is that at a very young age, I heard spirit. I remember as a child walking to school, probably around like 5, looking up at the clouds, and I heard the clouds talking to me. So I'm looking up in buildings because I figured it's got to be in the buildings. And they were like, we ain't in the buildings, we're up here. So, so my first strong recollection was my Native American spirits specifically giving me my name, my first name, outside of the one my parents gave me, and that was Morning Star, Morning Glory. So I used to always say, okay, I guess I was born at dawn, because, you know, parents didn't tell you too much about your life then. And then later on, when people would say, you know, where are you from? And, you know, they wanted to kind of capsule you into a place. I used to say, I'm from Venus, you know what I'm saying? And that's before, that's before they started the, you know, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. But what I found out through a reading later on in my life is that at the time that I'm born, Venus is the planet coming over the horizon at that time. So I realized that I knew I was talking about all along, you know. Raised primarily first in the Episcopal Church, then in the Presbyterian Church, and around 12 years old, I had this great teacher, Miss Price, and she was wonderful. I never missed a day of Sunday school. And then what I remember about her the most is she was an older woman, maybe 70, older. She never, in terms of asking us questions, our thoughts, interpretation of the Bible, which is a very complicated text. As an adult, I realized she never once said any of us was wrong. Never, ever, ever. And so she always encouraged us and spoke to us. And so when I left her class, I went to another class. I was getting older, so I was going to the teen class, you know. And I remember asking my teacher, because I had been having a lot of thoughts and different experiences. You know, I was one of those kids that invited the ancestors in to sit at the table and set a plate for them and a chair, and nobody could sit there. I know what I'm doing now, but, you know. But anyway, I remember, because I had already had my own experience, I was like, so what was Christ's childhood like, you know? And if my elders had just said, we don't know, I would have been fine. But what they told me made me know I was in the wrong place. They said, he had a normal childhood. I knew I was in the wrong place. So I got up out of there. And of course, you know, my family was very, you know, staunch in terms of going to church. I used to go to church and I sat there like this. And, you know, Episcopal church, you got to stand, sit, kneel, stand, sit. And I just sat there like this the whole time. So eventually I changed churches to a more politically active church. I got involved with them. But what really changed my life is, as an artist, I'm a visual artist and a performing artist. And so I've always sung, danced. I said I came dancing out of my mom on the steps of a hospital, and I've been dancing ever since. But I always had an affinity towards nature. I could talk to the birds, you know, I could talk to the animals, talk with the animals, you know. So I thought I was a Black St. Francis of Assisi who I knew about. But then I was trained as an opera singer and a ballerina when most Black folks weren't doing that. However, I had Catherine Dunham show up at my ballet camp at 15 years old. And that's what changed my life, you know? So she started dancing Afro-Haitian. I did not know at the time that she was a Haitian Vodun priest. I did not know that she had her PhD in anthropology. I didn't know that, but I also knew that I was at a white Russian ballet camp. And I understood exactly what she was dancing about. And so I say that from the dance that I've studied, and I've studied dance blessedly around the world, that from the dance, I've been able from the dance to go to the root, and the root is the spirituality. So I first learned about Vodun and Haitian through her. Then I started performing with Baba Olatunji, who's a Yoruba, and so learned about the traditions there. You know, they had these strange beads on. I'm like, what are these beads, you know? And so, but one of my first readings, I was initiated with a brother by the name of Chris Oleana and a woman by Penelope Stubbs in New York. They were some of the first, and Chrissy Oleana's family was also from Cuba as well. But the first reading I got from him, my father had died when I was a young child. They told me to do a mass for my father. And at that time, my spirit began to understand that it's all the same thing. Because here I am talking to an African priest whom I know nothing about. I don't know anything about this tradition, but he's telling me to have a mass for my father. So my logical brain was a little confused, but my spiritual self understood. So I continued to go through that tradition, and Obatala and Olokun are the ones who primarily, you know, work with me. And then many years later, I came into, and I've been blessed to travel around. They call me the dancing diplomat. I've traveled around the world. I lived in Japan. I lived in other places. I've seen people's spirit through who they are as well as through the dance. And when I came to Washington, D.C., also through the dance, working with Conqueron, one of our members was training in the Akan tradition, which I knew nothing about. So I started going to events, and these, you know, spirits started sitting on me and said, well, we want you to be our wife. Well, at the time I was married, and my husband was like, what are they talking about? Because the Yorubas we didn't use terms like that, you know. And I had worked with Mother Taylor when I first came to DC for a while. But anyway, growing out of that particular experience, I had 3 people do readings for me, and they told me that I should go into the Akan tradition as well, what I needed to do. In fact, one reading was from Baba Ishangi, who most of you probably know. And he told me not to tell him my question, but one of the answers he gave me, he said, if there's a store that has everything in it and you don't go there, whose fault is it? So I knew that I needed to add. So what I see is having, being blessed by different traditions is like having a master's in one and a master's in another. So the Yoruba is clearly my mother's family. The Akan is my father's family. When I showed up for my first official Akan reading, they pulled out Gordon's gin, which is the only thing my father drank once a year. There was no alcohol in our house. Once a year, he would take a little shot of Gordon's gin. And that, you know how Spirit just told me, it's like, okay, this is my dad. My dad looks like every other round-faced, brown chocolate Ghanaian man that I have seen in my life, you know? So again, my dad was like almost 60 when I was born. So we didn't have a lot of conversations about life. And then he passed when I was young, but I knew this was him. So Nana Suyao is my spirit, I say my ancestral angel in the Akan tradition. And I laugh because Nana Suyao is the river. Now Obatala is the top of the mountain. Olokun is the bottom of the ocean. Nana Suyao is the river, y'all ready? That connects the mountain to the ocean. Now tell me, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't have planned it any better than that. But Nana Suyao is also, I like to say, the African angel of unity. I love bringing people together, different kind of events, whether they're cultural, spiritual, anything that's going to bring people together. And also, he's considered to be the patron saint of don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy. You know, so that's really it. Catherine Dunham was the start, because I know if it wasn't for her that got me checking and reaching into these roots, the other aspects, I don't know how they would have come to me, but it was mainly through the arts. In fact, the Nubian Theater Company, which I direct now, and I now have shifted from a theater to also has a ministry and has a storytelling component. That's where I met the members who were also training in the Akan tradition. So, you know, and I'm working with a brother, Nana Yorinchi, Nana Enyo from Ghana, who are now, one is Nana Kwabana's first wife. A lot of you know Nana Kwabana. And Nana Yorinchi is from Ghana, so he's now.
Thank you.
Very good people, so.
All right, we're coming down. Reverend Alicia.
Hi.
Hi.
What city are you in, Reverend?
I'm on the road right now, but I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Okay.
For the minute, but right now I'm in Hampton, Virginia.
Okay.
And so as a child, when I was as a little child, I always saw dinosaurs. I saw things other people weren't seeing, and I was little, like 3 or 4, and I would play with them and talk to them, and I just thought that was normal. I just did. And my grandmother was Baptist, Southern Baptist, and my mother was Presbyterian USA. So I was raised in the Presbyterian Church. It was interesting. I was different from day one. I had 2 grandnonies, as I call them. They knew I was different. I was different. I gravitated towards the elders and towards animals, and I connected to earth. So I remember getting saved, or whatever you want to call it. I was young. I only did it because my sister wanted to do it, but she was afraid to walk down there. So I walked down there so she would go down there. And I was just, because I didn't need it. Like, I was like, I don't need it, you know, but she wanted to do it because her friend had done it. It's just, you know, one of those things. And I remember we had to go to these classes before we could be baptized. And I remember asking Reverend Wilson, like, what did Jesus do when he was little? And he said, there are other books, but they're not a part of the Bible. But there are these other books, and they're real. This is his story. And he knew, he said, and I said, well, why don't you teach that? And he said, because they not ready. So I checked them out, you know, and I checked them out, grew up, you know, I always was a writer, into poetry. That's what I did, storytelling, writing little plays for the church. And then at 18, I joined the Navy and went buck wild. That was my thing, like free at last, free at last. And in the midst of that, I became a Muslim, went to Mecca. And it was in Mecca where I met Africans who were doing Ramadan. And they were like, I was with some Arabs, and they were like, come over here. Come over here. Let me show this. So they taught me some tradition. And that's when I began to realize it's all the same. It's all the same. And then I got out of the military, and I did, believe it or not, I was always running from what I knew I was called to do. So I did LifeSpring, and in LifeSpring is where I said yes. I finally said yes. Wherever this rabbit hole takes me, I'm gonna go. And one of the people I knew was April, and April introduced me to the National Spiritual Science Center. And that's where I began to connect it all, because I knew it was all connected some type of way, but I was the type, every time I asked a question in Sunday school, they told me to be quiet. Like I couldn't even ask any more questions, because I was like, well, if God said he wasn't going to have any more floods, why is it flooding in Florida? Like, okay, so God don't know what he's doing? Or, you know, like I had real questions, and everybody was looking at me like, will she please shut up? And so that has been my journey. And what I have come to, I've ended up going back into nature, park ranger person. That's how I ended up out west. And my spiritual journey has been to the bridge. I've always known I was the bridge, because I can sit with my elders for hours. And then I have the younger generation that I mentor, and they're like, I don't understand them old people, but I understand both. And I like to bring people together. And so that's been what I've been doing, just bringing people together and helping women heal sexual trauma. And so, but how I knew that this was it, I got pneumonia. And I got pneumonia so bad, and that I died. First of all, they didn't know I had pneumonia for months. And then I was in the military, and then they figured it out, and they were like, well, if that fever don't break by the night, you need to check yourself in a hospital. And so I went and got an onion, put it in a sock, tied it around my neck, laid on that bed. And I remember going through this tunnel of light, and my mother was there. And I love cookouts, so we was having a cookout. And I said, you're not down here. She says, no, I'm not. I said, well, I want to go where you go. She said, it's not time yet. As a matter of fact, you got to go back. And that's when it hit me like, oh. She said, because you got work to do, and it's not your time. So you need to just go back. And when I woke up, my son was standing over me. He was a little kid, and it was daylight. But I knew my spirit had left my body and come back in. And that's when I was like, okay, you know, like, that's when I knew there was things beyond just what the mundane of the Bible. And from there, you know, whenever my mother shows up in my dreams or whatever, there's a message, and she's adamant about getting me on track and keeping me on track. And I listen. And so today, now, my journey has brought me full circle back to the East Coast, and to heal family trauma, community trauma within my family and community. So that's where I am today.
So now I know why that yes came. See, what you guys don't know is she is now the chair of the board at the National Spiritual Science Center.
Yes.
I started asking around. I said, I need a chair. And somebody said, I know exactly who to ask. And I said, I already had poured libation and prayed on it. So, yes.
Yes.
All of you women are truly love to upset the apple cart.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
But what I am noticing the string with all of you is that you ask the questions. And so much in the church, if they don't have the answer, they just say, believe or be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that got me in church when I was asking questions. And believe it or not, it was a Catholic priest that actually saved me. Because during the Mass, as an altar boy, I would serve Mass before I went to school. I felt safe in the church. But during the Mass, there were times when the energy, the light would come through the walls and it would get so hot I couldn't breathe and almost pass out. And a priest looked at me and said, what are you looking at during the Mass? And I said, nothing. He said, it's okay. And when I told him, he said, oh my God. He said, don't let anybody tell you that it's not real. I said, do you see it? He said, no, I feel something happens. And he said, does this happen with everybody? I said, no, only certain priests, and you are one of them. And believe it or not, he eventually left the Catholic Church, went to India. If some of you might know Prem Deben, he was my Sunday school teacher.
Wow.
And I met Deben years later, and he would walk up to me and go, rain, rain. And he would just smile and walk away and come back and go, rain, rain. And so one day I kept thinking, that is so familiar. And he said, have you figured it out yet? And I said, no. And he looked at me and said, Father John. I said, oh my God, he was a Catholic priest. Left the Catholic Church, went to India, studied, and became a yogi. The next question I want to get to is, because Alicia, you were leading right into it. There's a difference between being a believer and a knower. Believing is taking someone's word that is true. Knowing, you've had the experience for yourself. And it is, once you have that experience, there's no doubt.
Right.
And I just want to open it up for anybody can jump in. The experience you've had from moving from being a believer to a knower. And I know all of you have had that experience.
Okay, so I'll go. I was hurting real bad one night, spinal arthritis. I didn't believe the doctor when she said it. I'm like, anybody got no spinal arthritis? Until my body started saying, yeah, you do, and bam. And I was sitting in my room and the pain was just astronomical. It was just overwhelming. And I got up in my feelings with God. I did. I said, okay, you said you would never leave me or forsake me. You said, and I was just going, you said, and I was all of that. And I said, he could have knocked my hind parts out. And he did. Before I could get the third one out, I felt a major heat surge and fell back on the bed. And when I came to, I was like, oh, snap, did I tick him off? What happened? And I said, thank you. You know, that, and I tell folks I had a spiritual encounter outside of a club. If you're from DC and you know about Kilimanjaro, there was a wino who used to, sister, no, he used to help us park our cars. You know how the winos do. And I used to break him off some change if he found me a spot. He would stand there, risk his life to hold my spot.
That's a leg by.
What? Come on. So I was going up the steps and he was wheezing and he did all these funny things. All of a sudden he went serious. He stepped in my face and I couldn't move. I just kept staring at him and he said, "Sis, you're a good girl. He knows you're a good girl. You will be fine." And I'm standing there with my mouth hanging open going, what is going on? This was before a call. I had just started with Imani and stuff started happening. It just started rolling. It just started rolling. Man,
Yeah.
you know, it just one thing. So I'm listening to all my sisters on here and I'm like, oh my God, we're all alike. We're not, we are. And you know, I wouldn't tell folks about spiritual encounter with spirits. Because I'm like, okay, they're gonna think you crazy. Just
Yeah.
And
Anybody else want to jump in?
yeah.
I'm gonna say that in a lot of ways, I realized I've always been a knower.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to say when I was a youngster that, and I'm saying by the time I was 10, 11, that everything I'm learning, I'm just confirming what I already know.
Right.
And so, of course, understanding that, I'll put it this way, as I continued to live my life, I realized how accurate I was, because at first I wasn't even sure how deep it was what I was talking about, you know. However, all the different things that I've learned in life really have only confirmed what I already knew. So even when I had children, I remember sitting nursing one of my children and I had a voice come over my shoulder and say, you know, very quietly, like we're all in the room, like someone said, you know, you need to raise that boy to be very respectful of women, you know. And I was already, you know, a feminist. I was born a warrior. So, you know, Harriet Tubman, Joan of Arc, Annie Oakley, I mean, whoever it was, you know, when I was little, I'm like, I'm these people, you know. And so just experiences like that just seem very natural. And that particular calling came, if those of you that don't know, I have a celebrity son. A guy who, his name is Lamont Rucker. He plays Sheriff Troy in Why Did I Get Married? You all saw that movie?
Oh gosh, yeah.
That's my brother.
Yeah.
That's one of my 5 children. He's the first one that I was nursing when I got this message. And of course, I didn't know why I got the message, but you know, my response to the voice was, well, of course, because, you know, I'm a natural woman. I believe in, you know, women as being powerful, and I'm going to raise my son to be respectful. I mean, you know, that's it. But now that there's women standing around the block waiting for him, now I understand how important it was for me to make sure, how important it was for them to tell me to make sure you do that, particularly with this child. And he and another son of mine made commitments to never have any children until they were in committed relationships. And so he's been very, even before he was popular as an actor, very handsome guy. A lot of my family have that blessing of these fine looks. I used to take my cousins to dances to make my other boyfriends jealous, you know?
All right, you were one of those. Okay.
Just experiences like that, and things kept happening. Like they used to say, babies can't see, you know, until the census. I was like, they ain't stupid. Babies can see, they can feel, they can hear. You know, now you have the dog whisperer and all these things. It's like, you know, like animals can't understand, or they don't communicate with each other. Or philosophical, they used to ask this question. If the tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? And I realized that is white folk shit, because the animals can hear, the trees can hear, you know. So I just
you know what? I thought that was one of the dumbest questions that was ever asked. They talk about, yeah, I'm like, duh, is it following a natural law? Anybody else want to jump in here?
Yeah, so natural knowing. So.
Sure.
Yeah, like one of the things I remember was and I was in the Navy, and I had my first duty station. It was my first class, which is my supervisor. She wanted to have kids, and because they didn't catch a growth in her stomach, that by the time they caught it, it was the size of like a grapefruit, and they took it out. This was overseas. They told her she could never have kids, and that's what she always wanted. And I was like, you can have kids. And she's like, no, I can't have kids. I said, okay. So one day I came in and I said, you ready? And she said, what? So I said, show me your belly. And so she showed me her belly, and I rubbed her belly. And then I prayed. And I said, you're going to have some babies. And that was that. She had twins. Twins.
You can have a whole bunch of people lining up at your door. Rub my belly. Rub my belly.
I knew something told me that it was just a matter of healing and getting her to believe in her body. That her body was failing because she was believing what men doctors, Western doctors, was telling her, who didn't know what they were talking about. And that it just needed stimulating. And and friends of, I've always had friends that say, or like, Alicia, this is hurting. Lay your hand right here. And I would. And that's like she said, for me, like knowing, you kind of know as a child, but no, you don't have that direction of what it is, what it's called.
Yeah, because most children get trained out of it.
Yes.
Not into it. They get trained out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Grandma came out of the closet. It was my first encounter with spirit when she died. I had that experience at about 5, and my mother had to give me a volume because it was so real for me that I actually didn't understand that Grandma had died. And so I had that encounter. Then I had the 6-year-old speaking in tongues encounter. And then I had a near-death experience where I was under the pool for 5 minutes, and I was supposed to have died. And they sent a person to get me, and they had been looking for me. And in that bathing suit is where I had that transition from being a woman who was very focused on the church and naive about Christian life. And my mind exploded and expanded. I came out of dogma into a personal and private, powerful relationship with God.
Yeah.
And so that type of thing happened. And then I would have these other encounters, and there were many. And then when I was very little, I would put my hand on my mother's scars. My mother's a domestic violence survivor. My father tried to kill her. And I would put my hand on the scars, and I would have clarity about what had been done. And I would hear stuff about what had been done to my mother. And so, like, much of my life, I had been this, what we now know, this medium person. And it really set some grooves in place for me, for my music, which I call Orisha Gospel. It's a genre of music that places the 2 primary pillars of spiritual life in my life in one place.
Yes.
Orisha Gospel. And so this is kind of these experiences where I came to know God for myself. It didn't matter when I was bonded to a religious place. There were times where I was suicidal. There were times where I didn't believe that anyone loved me. And then there was God soothing me personally. And those are the kinds of experiences that helped me to understand that there was a God, and I could call God all kinds of things. But at the end, that was it.
I think for me, I remember as a child, or as a teenager, laying in my grandparents' yard. We'd be in Rhode Island on the summer times. We'd be at my grandparents on the Eastern Shore. And I used to lay on the ground and look up at the sky, and all the clouds had meaning for me. I could see people. I could see shapes. I could see, it was just incredible. And I remember maybe 7 years ago, the doctors had said they found a lump in my breast, and they did a biopsy, and it came back positive, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was baptizing people at my church on Easter Sunday at like 4 o'clock in the morning. When I was finished with everyone, I stayed downstairs, and I told them I just wanted to be in the pool by myself. And I remember something so wonderful coming over me.
Oh.
And it just instructed me to pick up some water and put it on the breast. And I just did that. And I prayed and I cried and I wailed, and nobody came down. They didn't want to bother me. Of course, when I finally went back to my doctor, there was nothing. There was nothing. And recently I had COVID-19. I'm a resident at Georgetown Hospital, and I recently had COVID, and I was pretty sure I was going to leave here with it, but I had decided to stay at home by myself. I live alone, and just deal with it slowly.
Yeah.
For the first time in my life, and this was in April of this year, I realized the only way to get healed and to trust and believe in God was to meet God, not in spirit, not in flesh.
Right.
God is not flesh. God is spirit, and spirit has no gender.
Yes.
Spirit has a gender, but no gender.
Yes.
I prayed and laid on the floor and talked to the Lord for over 30 days. I was at home for 45 and met God spirit to spirit, and was healed. They said, you're 70 years old. You're probably not going to pull through this. I said, yeah. I have a doctor that lives in my house. I can't see him, but I know he's there. I know she's there, right? So, so many things have happened over my life that have confirmed God is real and can use me.
Yes.
I was even pushed to touch somebody who was losing their eyesight in my church. We met secretly so that I could do that. His sight came back. I said, I don't need you to tell anybody what I did. This is just between you and I. Of course, he testified about it.
Of course. Listen, just like the leopard, when he said, "Go tell them."
Well,
to myself, right? He said that's what I did. But I'm not a believer any longer. I'm a knower.
Yes.
I'm a real knower. And
so you went through COVID too.
I did.
Yeah, I was in there for a month myself. And every day I would get up and walk out on my balcony and say, you cannot defeat me. I am a child of God. You cannot defeat me. And go back inside. Sometimes just had enough strength to do that.
Yes.
But, and you and a few of you know that I've been through some journeys.
Many.
And one of the things that I told the doctor told me January the 5th, 1990, I would never walk again and I wouldn't see Christmas. And I asked the doctor, by what authority do you speak? And he said, my professional opinion. I said, shit, I'm safe. I said, I'm going to do something in front of you that you're not going to understand. And I sat up and laid my hands on my own legs and said, I declare by the power of God in me, that I shall walk and have an abundant life. He said, I know this is hard for you to accept. I said, no, I don't accept it at all. I said, see, you practice medicine. What you simply tell me is you ran out of answers. So I needed to go directly to the source.
That's right.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So, yeah. And too often, because people put so much authority into a doctor, they allow them to prophesy over their life.
Right.
And a lot of my teaching is, no, you are strong enough. You have the power and authority to speak over your own life.
And I think
so many of you have shared those examples. And what I'm hoping this evening is that people that are listening and tuning in begin to understand that they too have the power.
Mhm.
I
That's
tell
right.
people, yes, I'm Bishop Cheeks. Yes, I'm a Basumfo. Yes, I'm a priest of Tigray. I'm your spiritual cheerleader.
Mhm.
That's what I see myself as, your spiritual cheerleader. Come on, you can do it. Get back up. You know, come on, keep running. And you are perfect examples of those spiritual leaders that have been through the fire and come out on the other side and shining brightly. And I really thank all of you for it. I want to ask one more question, and some of you have already sort of hinted at it in your life, is people think of a calling as like being called into ministry, but there are callings in your life that I guess you can say that is your ministry.
Mm.
When I was 14 and I trained in martial arts, 6 months of training, I won the nationals in my division. And my teacher then started calling me number one. And he said, you are the leader. I was 14. And he said, I will train you that way. Lord, I had no idea what that old man was going to do. For a long time, I hated bamboo because that's what he beat me with, bamboo. Bamboo and I were not good friends, okay? However, it shaped me and molded me that I end up in leadership positions. Yeah. And at my naming ceremony in the tradition, one of the names that came out was Nkawashifo. And I said, what does it mean? It says, the one who inspires us. Mm-hmm. He said, does that fit? I just kind of laughed and said, yeah, I can answer that. So I want to know from you, like, when did you discover something in you that you could call your calling in life? Because I know several of you sing, you're artists, yeah.
Well, I was sure for me that it was the arts. And there's a proverb that says, singing is like praying twice. And so having similar experiences, I'm an African-American woman. My mother's from New York. My father's family is from the West Indies and from Ghana. And we were around a lot of international people, but there were no Black folks in opera to speak of. There was Leotone Price, Marian Anderson, and a woman, Shirley Vervret, a lot of people don't know. But I say that because they pushed me through very quickly in certain things as well. And as a ballerina, before Ailey was recognized, again, a white Russian ballet camp, at 7 years old, they put me with the 14-year-olds because they said I was so good, okay? Still wouldn't let me dance, you know, other than being in the back of the chorus, but just in terms of skill. So there was something that I began to recognize that other folks saw that intrinsically I understood, but until I was an adult, I didn't really understand it the same way I do now.
So your calling was in the arts? It
was in the arts, yeah. So my calling is to teach and preach through the arts. So mine is to be inspiring, whether it's storytelling, was dance, theater, so people get the message that way, because they may not come into a church to get it.
Anyone else?
Okay, teacher healer. It was solidified for me on a trip to Phoenix, Arizona, in a Native American store way back. And I took on the name Noni when my son went to Watoto Nation House. And then in Phoenix, I had a spirit touch my back in the store 3 times. I thought it was somebody going by and it wasn't. And I turned because there were Kachina dolls behind me. And I said, who is she? He said, that is Crow Mother. I said, who is she? And he said, look her up. I said, okay. So my name became Noni Crow Mother. And I said, she's the teacher, healer of the boys in the village. And I started at one point where I used to live before I came here. I found myself looking after all these young men in the hood. I called them my babies in the hood. And then the boys brought the girls, and the pastor said, did any of them change? And I said, well, some. I saw some that were shot down, some ended up in jail, but there were some who listened.
Mm-hmm.
I became this counselor, and it just feels right to guide.
Yeah. Okay.
Because people have to make the decision on their own to change.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm the peacemaker. Like I can walk into the room and right away know, okay. And there had been a time where I would withhold. I remember this like game we did, and it was called the Red Dot game, and basically you tried to figure out, it was two teams, and you tried to figure out in different rooms how to work together to solve one common problem. But immediately there were people who jumped up, was like, F them, we're gonna do it, all the character, everybody. And yet I sat in the back, I knew the answer. I instinctively knew the answer, would not give it. And at the end, one of the facilitator looked at me, he said, you knew the answer all along, but you withheld it. And you could have brought both of those groups together. And I knew that. I was afraid. I was afraid. And I didn't want to, I didn't want to deal with it. I was like, I'm young, I'm trying to, but what I got from that was, most of the time I do know the answer, and I know how to bring about peace and to bring things together in harmony so that we all can move forward. And I've learned not to withhold that, because my withholding wasn't in like being arrogant. It was with like, I just don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm trying to live my best life. But that didn't bring me joy. I find I have more joy when I sit down and I'm able to bring everyone together and to be that teacher, that healer that moves them forward. Right? And my thing is, if I only reach one in my whole entire lifetime, it was well spent. And I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories. Okay. And that's how I use it to bring people together.
Great. Coach Suave.
When I was 50, I asked Bishop to change my name. And the name that came out of the ceremony was Abena, girl born on Tuesday. And I wore it for many years. 3 years ago, I was in Africa, South Africa, and I went to this priest king's compound. And so he came and all his people were fanning him as he walked to his chairs in the backyard. And all of my classmates that's in the D-Men program with me introduced themselves, and he reached out and shook their hand. When I got up, I said, I'm Abena. And I reached out my hand and he wouldn't touch it. And I thought, okay, what did I do? I was trying to be, with culture and everything, do everything right. And he said, why are you Abena? I said, that's my African name. He said, no, it's not. I thought, you don't know me from a can of paint. But he said, that's not your name. He said, there's Sunday written all over you. You on a Sunday. So he took me to a book and showed me April the 16th, 1950. I was born on a Sunday.
Right.
He said,
So you thought you were born on a Tuesday.
And he goes, what's your other name? And I said, my Dyan, D-Y-A-N. He said, stop pushing to be who you're not. Your name is Akuswa Dyan, which means in African, girl born on Sunday, and Dyan is Hebrew for you are enough. I like that. Mike, I said, okay. He said, so stop trying to push. You have everything you need to do what you came here to do. Put it in yourself. Don't let anybody else find it. Give it. And that changed my whole life.
You know what? It's so crazy because, I have used Kwabena.
Yeah.
Because when at the naming, they said, when were you born? And I gave them the date. They came back as Kwabena.
Tuesday.
4 years ago, I'm with a priest and she said, "You're not a Kwabena." I said, okay. She said, "When is your birthday?" And she looked it up. She said, "I knew it. You are Yao." I said, "And when did that happen?" She said, "You are Yao." So for 20 years, I have used Kwabena, and now I switched to Yao.
Yeah.
So no, your energy, you're Yao.
Yeah.
I said, okay. And it was almost the same thing. That is not you.
Right.
Because I thought all the time that I was on a Tuesday.
I did too.
Yeah. So we both started off on Tuesday and ended up you on a Sunday and I'm on a Thursday.
Because back in those days, they didn't put a whole bunch on a black birth certificate anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the 50s and before that, you know, so they don't know what day they, you know, whatever. So
Yeah.
now I know.
You can look it up on your phone.
I know.
Yes.
See?
Now you can look it up on your phone, the date and everything. It'll tell you the day of the week and everything.
Wow.
You know?
Listen, everyone, our hour is up. I want to be respectful to your time. I intend to reach out to you again to have smaller groups or do some one-on-ones, maybe a half hour or so. I'm praying that this discussion blessed those that have listened in and heard it. I know last week after that group, I got several emails, and I'm saying to everybody that's listening, if you want to reach any one of these women, if you email me, I will make sure that they get it. I am so grateful and so humble, and I can walk around and brag like, yeah, I know them personally.
That's
you know?
right.
Yeah, I got bragging rights on this. So.
Right.
And I want you to help put us in touch with each other if you would.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I just started writing
I will make
everybody's name
sure
down.
that you get each other's information.
Okay.
And now I was going to suggest that because each one of you, as you've heard, have been on a journey. And they started off in many different places, but you're all based now sort of in the same thing, knowing the truth, having that personal experience with God that nobody can change. And I know that there's a lot of power. I'm going to suggest this because I'm working at developing a men's group and actually a spiritual group of spiritual leaders, but that we're going to separate so that the men have a group and the women have a group. So I would strongly suggest something that I had to get a grip on. Coach, while you're 70 now, I'm right behind you, knocking at the door of 69 this March and going across that line. And one day I was talking about the elders and somebody looked at me and said,
You are one.
Donna, you are the elder. I'm like, when did that happen? You know?
And every time someone older than us passes, we get promoted.
Yes, and I'm like, okay.
Step up.
And we are now the seasoned ones in our community.
Yeah.
And we have a lot to share.
Yeah.
I thank you and I applaud you for sharing all of who you are this evening. I thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I know it has
Thank
been
you.
a blessing
Blessing
to
to
those
you.
who have tuned in and to listen. And
Thank
Of
you,
course.
everybody.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to pray out.
Oh, sure.
I have one thing I'd like to share, and that's to everybody listening, and that is through the messages that we all shared. The proverb I wanted to leave is, your assignment is not given, it's discovered.
I chill.
And I think for everything we've talked about, I think that would sum it up.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
Let us close our eyes for just a moment. Creator, awesome Creator. We thank you for this time together. We thank you for the sisterhood. We thank you for bringing Bishop Cheeks to the realization that this was something that should happen with the men and with the women. Let all of us that leave here tonight know that the power that you have instilled in us is more than we even can imagine it to be. That the healing is here, that the delivering is here, that the storytelling is here, that the dancing is here, that the acting is here, that the writing is here, that the praying is here, that you have given us all we need. And so let us remember this evening, as we close our eyes and prepare to go to sleep, that you created us for such a time as this.
Yes, Lord.
That you made us warriors and fighters in our own right.
Yes.
You have colored our skin with cappuccino and espresso and all the beautiful colors.
Yes.
Mhm.
And you have colored our hearts with love.
Yeah.
Amen.
Guide us and direct us to be more than anyone could even imagine
Not sure.
that we could be. We give you glory, honor, and praise for all things, seen and unseen, that are filled with your power.
Yes,
And
God.
so it is.
Cool.
Madase, Madase, Madase,
Right.
Madase.
Amen.
Madase.
Ashe.
Thank you, thank you,
Inshallah.
thank you, thank you. Oh, I
Yes,
am an
yes.
excited. You know what? See, I was laughing with someone. I said, you know, I have an honorary card into the women's group this evening.
Yes, of course.
Bless
And thank you for allowing me to do this.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And this
And
is
Iya,
not going to
Rebecca?
be the only time that we do this.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah,
I want to be able to come back. This is sort of like the introduction, where we can come back together again.
Mm.
And I'm hoping that later on we will have something that we actually physically are in the same room.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yes. Blessings.
Need that metaphysical energy together.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
No, that's right.
Yes.
All right then.
So I am
Oh, there you go. He's gone.
Yes.
I think I just stopped the video.
Okay.
I
All
think.
right.
I don't know. I pushed the button.
Bye,
Thank
Bob.
you, everybody.
Yes.
All right.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night.
Blessings.
See you again.
That's it.
All right. God bless.
Abundant
God bless.
blessings.
Go ahead.
Thank
God
you
bless.
all.
Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Peace
Bishop.
to
Thank you,
everyone.
Bishop.
Thank you,
I
Bishop.
will be calling you Bishop Rainey, not Quabba Rainey anymore.
Yow. Yow.
Yeah.
Yow.
Yes.
I shouldn't have told y'all that. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
All right.